they need this. But there's talk now of potentially the Democrats, if Trump's the nominee, saying Joe Biden's not debating. He's not going to debate and help platform this lying, stream of consciousness person who cannot, see the truth with the highest strength glasses. Like, that's already what they're saying. So they're going to do the basement campaign again, or at least try, and then not have him debate. Do you think that'll work?
I don't know if it'll work. I don't think it's good for our country. I don't think that's good for our country. I don't think anybody can think that's good for our country. And I think the optics and the rest of the world, we're already losing our leadership, where our moral authority is diminished. We're supposed to be the exemplary nation. We invented democracy in this country, modern democracy. The Greeks invented it before us, modern democracy in 1776. We were the only democratic nation in the world at that point. By the Civil War, by 1860, there were 6 democracies, all modeled on the United States. And today there's 180, and we are their model. We're the ones that they're looking to and saying, we want to be like the United States of America. And this is just, it's very troubling to me, and it should be troubling to most Americans, that we cannot, model democracy for the world, that we're going to have leaders that are picked, by spending money, by getting money from wealthy people and corporations, and then propagandizing the American people, and that they never have to meet anybody. They never have to do a town hall that's not all set up with, people who are whose questions they already know, and the answers that are already written out for them, and that they're just reading stuff. It's not real. People know it's not real, and people are angry in this country right now. People are angry, and they're riddled with anxiety. The middle class is being destroyed in this country, and now our democracy doesn't work. I just think it's terrible for our democracy.
He kind of hid information about his full mental state in his last official exam, because he didn't release the results of any mental exam. Same as John Fetterman, frankly. They hid information about his well-being before the election. He got in and then promptly had an emotional breakdown and spent 6 weeks inpatient at Walter Reed. So there's a real concern here about how well Joe Biden is. Do you share those concerns about his mental well-being, his fitness for the job?
I really don't have a way to make, I don't have any insight that's different than what the American people see. I see the things, that you showed, and that, I read an article the other day, Megyn. I don't know whether it was in the New York Times or the Washington Post, but it was in a major journal, in which some pundit, a Democratic pundit, was making the argument that it's okay if the president is non-compos mentis. It's because you don't really need mental acuity to run the country. You can be more of a figurehead, and you're surrounded by, technocrats.
Oh, I saw this.
Policy.
I saw this. You're saying age, whatever. So he's age. So he's old. So he might be potentially infirm, and then they pointed out that FDR was in a wheelchair. Oh, that's the same.
FDR was in with his legs were disabled, but he was not mentally disabled. At the end of his last presidency, where he'd been, his 4th election, by that time he was extremely infirm, and and you can make an argument about whether that was good, because we were in the middle of the war. People did not want to switch towards mainstream in the midstream. But the problem is, if you're surrounded by people, a lot of times, and I'm not making a judgment on his mental acuity, or not, because I don't know. I don't have any insight into it, but I don't think it's good to have a president who's not on his toes. Because what happens is it empowers the people around you. And those people are, in his case, are people who are, the neocons, who are warmongering, who are who are technocrats, who are people from the pharmaceutical industry and lobbying firms. And it's just, it's a license for those, the military industrial complex and these large corporations to pillage our country and to complete the destruction of the American middle class. And we need a vigorous president who's robust, who's ready to tackle these real problems and not just keep the ship sailing. You know, one of the things with FDR when he was on his fourth term, he had a ship that was sailing to victory. He had, you know, he was building the American middle class. He was winning the war against the Nazis and against Japan and against fascism across the globe. He was building alliances around the world. So he had this long success story, and America was on an uphill trajectory. Today, America's on a downhill trajectory. And there's nobody in this country who can disagree with that. And we need a course reversal. And the president who is infirm is not a president who's going to make that kind of course reversal. We need somebody who's vigorous and who's ready to make big changes, to change staff, and to change the direction of the country. And and so people have to make a judgment about whether Joe Biden is actually going to do that or whether it's going to be business as usual. And the business as usual is a prescription or cataclysm for the American middle class.
The article was in the Daily Beast. Daily Rothkopf, Joe Biden is old. Get over it. You know, hearing you talk and talking about some of these issues, you definitely have a fair amount in common with President Trump when it comes to policy. And also, I would say, as an outsider, you know, just coming in and saying, I see all these things differently. My party's doing it wrong. So listen to me. So we're going to come back. But quickly, before we go to break, if you had to choose, if you didn't get the nomination, you had to vote for either Joe Biden or Donald Trump, could you see a world in which you supported Trump?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you're right that a lot of my issues are you know, cross-party lines. They're on free speech. They're on rebuilding the middle class, on rebuilding the industrial base in this country, protecting the environment, ending corruption in government. And those are things that kind of avoid the culture war issues and look for common ground with Americans. And I think I share those with people of both parties. And that's why I think I have a lot of support from both independents and Republicans as well as Democrats.
You do. So you're not going to say, if Joe Biden becomes the nominee, would you vote for him?
I'm not going to say. I'd have to see what happens.
Keeping it open mind. Okay, stand by, because I do want to ask you about